people do use different language for the same thing. So your gut instinct, your intuition, or just your clear knowing, I just know because I know, right? That very I just know it, right? People say it all the time and they don't realize they're talking about one of the biggest clairs that we all come into this world with, so we can literally, for the first and foremost, to survive. Clear knowing to survive. It is safe. It is not safe. I must run. I must fight. All of this is part of us as animals, right? As nature, because we're nature, and we're also spirit. We're both. We are the anchor between heaven and earth and all that we are and all that we do. And those expressions show up just to help guide us on this journey.
Welcome, beautiful beings, to season 2 of the Cosmic Love Antenna podcast with your host, Harrison Ma. This podcast sets the loving intention of creating the mystical space needed to pull back the layers restricting health, alignment, and love. Now let's walk you home to your cosmic spiritual heart space. Before we continue this beautiful chat today, wonderful souls, I need to jump in here to share something really exciting. If you've been following these episodes or you've been following me on social media, you know that I am in the process of releasing my first book, Your Cosmic Love Antenna, Define, Embody, and Emit Your Unique Frequency of Love. And at the time of this episode release, pre-orders are now open. If you have been pulled to this show, if you're looking to understand the what, the how, and the why of love, if you're looking to apply some of the tools connected to your chakras, inner child, releasing religious trauma, ancestral healing, emotional release, and so much more, then this beautiful expression from my heart to yours is for you. If you are looking to channel more of your unique gifts and the divine frequency that you are, these pages will open all of this up. And if you're interested, all you need to do is go to cosmicloveantenna.com. That's cosmicloveantenna.com. And you can pre-order this book right now. If you pre-order, click on that link, put in your email, you're going to get access to some special gifts that I'm only offering to those who get in before I release it fully. These gifts are going to be some more channeled meditations, activations, and some other surprises from my heart to yours. So head over to cosmicloveantenna.com, pre-order this beautiful expression, and I can't wait to hear how it shifts your life. If you're listening to this after pre-order sales, that same link can be also used to go to the direct purchase link. Sending love, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of this episode today. And today, I'm excited because we're going to go deeply into the mystical and spiritual levels today, specifically talking about all things clairsenses, your divinity, your frequency, and expressing more of your loving light with the world. The beautiful guest who I'll introduce here in a second has been on the show before, and last time we had a chat was very magnetizing, full of love, full of frequency, full of mystical insights. And today we're going to go even deeper into all of that. But before I allow this powerful being to share her voice, I just want to quickly share some gratitude for everyone tuning in. If you're new to the show, welcome. If you are a returning family member, we love you. We see you. We feel you. Remember, beautiful beings, if you get some value out of this show today, you can share it with your friends, your lovers, your family that you connect with. You can leave your reviews over on Apple and Spotify. It really supports the show. And if you're looking to join more tribe and more family, I recently started a Facebook group connected to the podcast. So you can go over to Facebook, search the Cosmic Love Antenna, and join the tribe. My beautiful guest needs no introduction, but she's going to get one anyway. Lisann Valentin is a powerful woman. She's a shamanic amplifier. She is a soul in this world that's showing her love and light in many different ways. She's an actress. She's a writer. She's a coach, but she's so much more than that. And we're going to get into more of that here today on the show. Lisann, welcome back to the Cosmic Love Antenna. How are you feeling, my friend? We were just talking about this before we started recording. For now, anyway, we'll see how the conversation goes. We'll see what Spirit wants to share. Lisann, I was preparing the outline for this show yesterday, and my intention for this today for people tuning in is I want to go a bit deeper into all things clairsenses. However, I think
Thank you,
doing a show
Harrison.
just on that alone
Thank you for
is not
having me. I'm
enough,
happy to be
especially
here.
when it comes to your frequency and the love that you bring into this world. So my intention today is I want to
I feel
outline
much
some of the
better. I
clairsenses
feel
a little bit
less
more. I would encourage
heated.
people to go back to
I
the
got my
first episode
grounding
we did
rocks.
together.
I'm just breathing.
We talked about this a little bit as well. But I
For
also
now,
want to
let's
go
see.
into, what is behind the clairsenses? What is our frequency? What is our divinity that expresses through that, and how we can share more of that with the world? So that is really what we're going to get to. But let's start with the clairsenses, and then we'll go from there. My friend, I'd love to ask you the question for people that didn't catch the first show. How would you define what a clairsense is? And no, and I think it's a beautiful outline. I think it's a beautiful description. So let me throw another question at you then. How do we can maybe talk about what the different kinds are, but I think the thing that comes up for me, first of all, with that description and that outline is, okay, I understand that. That it sounds very normal, but I know for me, I grew up in a world where I only learnt about these senses in my 20s, my late 20s. So how does one start to cultivate these beautiful gifts, these senses? How do we start to awaken these senses that have been there the whole time?
Reawaken, right?
Yes.
Because I feel like we come in fully ablaze and then we little by little start shutting it down. For me, the thing that was helpful was to start classifying what I was experiencing. So with mindfulness and intention, allowing my logical mind to say, oh, this would fall into this category of things. And now I understand how I'm perceiving the world in physical and in spirit would fall under, let's say, clairvoyance. The minute my logical mind could understand it, and I'm getting shooting up my legs, the minute my logical mind could understand it, then I can validate it instead of what would have automatically been done as invalidating it as a child's imagination, or you're making it up, or you're losing your mind, or any myriad ways to say intuition is invalid, right? So, and I grew up in a very, despite my lineage with like the rigidity that I grew up with, especially how I internalized things, I was quick to say intuition was like, don't listen to it. That's garbage, like logic and reason. And actually it was bad. It only brought bad things. That's sort of like, I was so pushed away from myself that I had to classify it as something I should stay away from. That's not good for me. Yeah. I mean, I can go into tons of stories about that because I think we all can at some point, right?
What it shows, Lisa, and I think it's very powerful that our mind, and I was just talking about this yesterday, our mind in our ego is not inherently bad. Our mind and our ego is not innately broken or something we need to push to the corner, especially within these spiritual conversations. It is something that most of us, if not all of us, need to reprogram, right? We need to, I always like the beautiful analogy and the image of a garden. Our mind and our ego is a garden. And most of us, myself included, have a lot of weeds, have a lot of unhealthy plants that are growing, that are projecting onto, in this example, these beautiful spiritual gifts, and sort of very unconsciously in most cases, pushing them away. But if we can start to plant some beautiful seeds of understanding and acceptance and appreciation for what these gifts are, then the lower mind works for us, not against these expressions. Does that resonate in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. It totally resonates. I think that when I'm the issue, I think, becomes when we can have all of that and we haven't done the inner work to be the receiver and to know that what we're receiving is of the highest good. Because when we have a lot of fear and judgment coming in either from us or from external to us, and we're receiving that instead of like divine source, like that energy, we fall deep into those shadows. I mean, there's layers to this. There's layers to this.
So let me ask a question about that, because that's actually, we'll get there later, but I'll pop it in here now, because those shadows and the falling into that, I don't know what you would call it, the darkness. I think even we can have a lot of misunderstandings around that darkness, because darkness is just light that hasn't been given the time of day, or we're pushing away or ignoring, suppressing, numbing, all the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what are some of the ways that pop up for you that we can start to move through this darkness so we can come back to our innate light, our spiritual expression, in this case, whether it's through the clairsenses? What are some things that pop into your mind? So for example, for me, the things that I first go to just from the work that I do is, inner child work, right? Looking at our ancestral chains and traumas, looking at, could even go back to like past lives and things we talked about in the last episode. What comes up for you when we start to sort of tune into, some of this darkness does come up, but starting to meet it instead of sort of looking away and ignoring it?
So what comes to mind is, I think we mentioned this a little bit when we were talking about what we wanted to talk about. And it's, for me, it's the idea of perfectionism, or wanting to be right, and also wanting to be good. And if I find myself falling short of perfection, which we all do all the time, but the illusion of perfection, right? Then I'm very quick to shut down. I was anyway, very quick to shut down my intuitive gifts. That's what I did for many, many years, through decades, right? If I was perceiving myself as bad, that was the very first trigger to shut it down. And that was because when I did the train of thought of like, what's the core why behind this feeling? It was always rejection for being unloved. If I'm wrong or if I'm imperfect, then I will be rejected. And if I'm rejected, that means I'm not lovable. That means I'm not worthy of love. And therefore I will not receive love. Like, it's the very like core of it is like, what makes me lovable? Right. So, I mean, I think one of the biggest examples of that, if I may,
please,
there's this, my shamanic lineage comes from my maternal grandfather's side. Mm-hmm. And his brother, we were visiting him in Puerto Rico. At the time, it was super heavily Catholic. Like I was like the president of campus ministries at my college. Like that's how Catholic I was, right? I was like, yeah, everything. And there's nothing wrong with Catholicism. I was just very invested in it. And I was not invested in my lineage or intuition at all. And so all of a sudden we're visiting this, he's in his 80s at the time, and my friend's with me, and I look over at the mirror and there's something on the mirror. It looks like if there was hairspray, like layers of hairspray in a corner. And when I looked at it, it looked like a sketch. And the more I looked at it, it looked like a sketch of my great uncle, whose house I was in. And I go to my friend at the time and go, do you see that thing in the corner? He was like, yeah, the splotch on the mirror. And I'm like, no, it looks like my uncle. And I'm like kind of whispering this. And I take a picture because I had like my first DSLR or whatever. Took a picture. And I showed him the angle that I was perceiving it at. And I said, do you see the eyes, the nose, the mouth, whatever? And he goes, oh yeah, I can see a face. But I was like, no, that's not just a face. It looks like a sketch of my great uncle. My great uncle catches wind of what I'm doing. He's like, what do you see? What are you seeing there? And I go, that looks like a sketch of you in the mirror. And I didn't know what I was saying. And he took a deep breath and he sort of just digested it and looked at it. And he goes, my time is coming. And I what was so exciting and interesting, all of a sudden felt horrible because I inadvertently divined his death date, right? That's his time of his transition. And I didn't know. And then I immediately thought I was bad. I did something wrong. This is horrible. And he soon after passed. I mean, he lived a vibrant life and he was very intuitive. So I think he understood, he had more wisdom than I did then. I don't divine people's deaths, right? I don't do that. But it took me time to stop judging myself and my gifts. So that phenomenon is called, I think it's called pareidolia, where you perceive patterns. No, when you see patterns so like in tessiography, when you look at someone's coffee, or you see a pattern of clouds in the sky, or like angel numbers, patterns where there necessarily wouldn't be patterns, where you're perceiving that. That's what the ink blot tests are about, right?
And that was the first time that you had practiced that with the
first time I was vocal about what I was seeing. I would ignore it. And then I went back to ignoring it because I vocalized it, and therefore I did something horrible. Therefore, I must shut down my intuition.
So, first of all, my friend, thank you for sharing that experience and that story. And what it brings up in me, and what it shows here very clearly, is whether it's a religion, whether it's a cultural paradigm, whether it's something that we've taken on from our family growing up. When we're in a belief system is inherently closed. So it's very difficult for us to see outside of that belief system to maybe some more expansive ways of being and living, right? We don't know because we're in it, right? We can't see out of it because it's closed. But I think the empowering thing here from your story, and this is something we all have access to, whether we are aware of it or not, is that there is a higher power, spirit, force, being, God, love, divinity, whatever you want to call it, that is running through us and around us. And sometimes what can happen is that force can express itself in the outside, and people can, who are listening can't see my hands here, but I'm putting little fingers up in the outside to help us see what we need to see on the inside, even if we are in a closed system, right? And I think it's up to us in that moment to really process how it makes us feel. Right? I'm sure, was there a lot of fear? Was there a lot of anxiety around when that first
started
happened?
with fear and anxiety with intuition the whole time. So that was my baseline.
Yeah.
So I didn't embrace it. I dismissed it. And then when it showed up, I judged it. I judged myself. And so we talked a little bit about this. Like when we have fear, self-judgment, this self-condemnation, like we create this illusion of a crack in the armor, this beautiful armor that we all have. And that allows us to experience more of that fear, more experiences of like where self-judgment can come into play. We're inviting that in inadvertently, not really realizing that, oh, I'm trying to protect myself and therefore I will be afraid of all things intuitive and woo or mystical. But what I'm doing is inviting more of that to validate what I think about it, to reinforce it, right? And so I'm not that way at all anymore. Like I love reading my coffee cups. I look at the clouds in the sky. Wherever there's an image, what I do with my intuition is I ask, like, tell me more. Why am I seeing this? What does this mean for me? Being inquisitive like a child would, the why, then you can tap into why that's showing up in that clairvoyant sense, right? Yeah. I'm using my clear sense of seeing to perceive that. Mm. And now I can play more. I have more fun with it. That's the difference, right? There's no play in fear.
And it's a higher frequency, right? That play and that awe and that curiosity. I don't know if we talked about this, but this connects to that Hawkins scale of consciousness, right? When we raise to those higher frequency levels, it takes us out of that heavy denseness, right? That can keep us in that separation state. Lisann, let's take a step back because I can feel us going really deep here. And one more thing I want to hit on before we go, because I have some deeper questions I want to ask you aligned with this. But let's go quickly back because you brought back the clairvoyance. And I want to ask one more question here around the clairsenses, and then we'll dive into the mystical deep depths. I think you mentioned in the last episode, but I want you to sort of maybe break it down a bit more here. For you right now, you have your clairs that are activated, your clairsentience. I think you explained a little bit of your clairsentience, your clairvoyance. Do you have access to all of them at the moment, or is it just which ones are activated in your being right now?
They're all activated.
Yeah.
But they're the least strong ones. The ones I don't necessarily like lean into are clairsalience and clairgustance.
Why is that?
I guess I don't really like enjoy smelling and tasting things that are not there. So I'm kind of like, I try to, I'm like, okay, thanks so much. I don't really want to dive into that taste right now or that smell, but it'll happen. It'll come up in the nicest way.
For people that are new to the clairsenses, they didn't all activate at once, right? It was gradual, correct?
Yeah, it takes time. It's still taking time. I think it's not, I don't want to describe it in a way that it's one or the other. I feel like they always interplay.
Yes.
They dance together. And so if I'm seeing something in my mind's eye, I'm also hearing words in connection with the thing I'm seeing. So let me explain that, because people are like, oh, if I don't see it in front of me, it doesn't exist. No. So for me, the way I perceive clairvoyance, and let's say we'll do clairvoyance, clear seeing, and clairaudience, clear hearing. We'll just do those two for now. Clairvoyance can show up as a memory playing in your mind. All of a sudden, you're thinking about taking a next step of action and a memory pops up that will connect you to a feeling inside of you. Either it feels like a positive expression of a memory or a not positive expression. And that, if you ask the right question, is a form of guidance that can help you lean into like, oh, maybe if I'm thinking about doing X and Y and Z, I'm having a memory that perhaps causes me pain and I don't feel good. Maybe what my intuition is saying is don't lean into that, or maybe take a step back. Asking the right question in terms of how those two interplay together is how you start developing more trust. And this can also be that you start hearing a song in your head, right? You start like, I can't fight the feeling. You're like, that's happening. You're like, what is that? Oh my God, I have so much joy. Why is that coming up? Something related to like, I was doing something and that song came up like, oh, I'm so happy doing this. Good sign, getting tingles up my legs.
Mm. That's your clairsentience there too, my friend.
That's my clairsentience. Yeah. And so there's, and they go again. And so like they play together if you allow them to play together. And I think a lot of people experience these things and they don't realize it's going on because they've dismissed it as just like, it's just a thought, right? Or it's woo.
Yeah.
I can hear things outside of myself and see things outside of like my mind's eye. That does happen. That's mostly how it expresses the clairvoyance. Like I'll see an image download in front of me, like on a computer screen, like an old computer screen, like like really slowly. And the clairaudience, I will hear things outside of myself, but mostly it's like I'll hear the word, or I'll see the word, like if it's written on the wall. Interesting how they play with both together. So now clairsentience is cool because you're feeling physical manifestations in your body, but it also can be that you're feeling the feelings of someone else.
Pause there for a second.
Yeah.
Because let's break that down, because that's a theme it's been coming up for me at the moment. But just before we get to that, just want to go back, two things I want to add to this, because there's a lot coming through me. What I would love for listeners to lean into is, much like our physical being, when it comes to our movement, our nutrition, we're all biochemically individualized. And in my experience, and I think Lisann agrees with this, it's the same thing with our clairsenses. We express them. There is a sort of flow that we can connect into, but the expression of them and our memories and our connection to them is unique to us. So listen to what Lisann is saying or what I'm saying, but also be aware that your unique expression will also be layered on top, right? There will be some themes that will be similar, but then there will be some unique things to you that make this powerful to you. So I want to put that in there for people listening. The other piece I was going to add is the synergistic nature of them, right? Really shows how beautiful we are, right? We aren't an isolated mechanistic machine that I think a lot of us can fall into in many ways within the collective perspective. We have things working together all the time. And again, this is just another example of that. Right? Look at all the things happening in your physical being that are working together, right? From your gut to your mind, to your heart and your all these things that are working together. The clairs, like Lisann is saying, have that same sort of theme. Continue, my friend, with the clairsentience, because this is, I think, if I'm reading your mind here, you're going into the difference between clairsentience and clairempathy. and the line that we can make. So continue with that train of thought.
I will, but don't let me forget about claircognizance.
Oh, yes.
Don't
Let's talk. Yeah, we'll do that next. We'll do that next.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, how I perceive it, clairsentience is like physical manifestations that show up in your body, understanding how someone else is feeling. But when you're talking about clair empathy, you're embodying and experiencing those emotions.
Mm.
So it takes a type of discernment to say, okay, is this mine or this is not mine? Like to have that question and to lean into what the answer is. Because so many times you can walk around thinking all these feelings are yours and you don't have a grounding practice or a way to release it that helps you realize, oh, this wasn't mine. And it goes away as soon as it came, the minute you're able to discern it. So that's, for me, that's a difference between clairsentience and clairempathy. It's like the total embodiment and experience of an emotion. Now, whether we're talking about clairsentience or clairempathy, you can be with the person or individuals or not, right? They might not be there, but you might be like connected to them. There's definitely, like I keep seeing, like a golden cord, right? Connecting you energetically to them. Now, going back to clairsentience, you can also feel into the energy of a room, whether or not there's people in there. Now, that also takes you to clairtangency, which is also a form of clairsentience, but it's being able to feel into the feelings and memories attached to things. So like if you walk into, I don't know if we said this together, but like if you walked into an antique store and all of a sudden you're getting slapped with emotions, like, or perhaps you're just feeling anxious. Oh no, I don't know if I don't like it in here. There's too many things. Sometimes that can be visually assaulting, but other times it can be that you're feeling everything all at once. And if you pick up something and there's a dense energy attached to it, or like a memory, let's say, because when we carry items with us, jewelry, even a chair we sat in, there's an energy there, right? Now I'm feeling energy in my legs. And so we will pick up on the frequency of those things. And so that's why especially when I talk to highly empathic people, I like to pair clairsentience, clairempathy, and clairtangency because they play together. Separating them only helps us sort of discern what's going on with us. But at the end of the day, you won't need to do that. Once you know what's happening, you have an awareness, and then you can just go about your life and use whatever tools work for you.
So the clairtangency is new to me, and I really appreciate you explaining that because it brings up something really interesting. But just before I hit on that, the line between clairsentience and clairempathy, something that I found very powerful with this, and I'd encourage people to. At the time of me releasing this episode, I should have released another one with the powerful Jennifer talking about being an empath, and we really broke down the nuances of clairempathy and being an empath in general. So go back and listen to that episode. But what I talked about in that episode and what I want to share here now quickly is really learning to discern your frequency and other people's frequency, right? And we're going to talk about this in a bit on this show. You are a unique soul expression of the oneness, whatever your name for that oneness is, right? Love, God, divinity, consciousness, but you are unique expression. So if we can understand that, we can also see that our soul has a unique frequency, but everyone has a unique frequency. So I've found in my sort of clairempathy, clairsentience, that it's been really helpful to discern and discover and to educate myself when I go inwards. What does my unique frequency feel like? What does Lisann's unique frequency feel like? And now I can start to distinguish between, what is the energy that is moving through me? Is this my frequency or is this someone else's? Right? Does that resonate, my friend? Do you agree with that?
Yeah. And it's actually, you've helped me quite a lot in the way you describe it because so I struggle with, and I still struggle when I've taken so many workshops on developing one's psychic senses. And so like, for example, the latest was like, here's a box, tell me what's in it. I fight myself so much, but because I won't ever get it right because now I'm in my ego and I'm like, I should be able to do this. And I'm just logically trying to figure out what's in the box instead of like just relaxing and letting it come. I'm forcing and pushing. And so, the thing that you said about discerning vibration between people is also a fun way that my shamanic mentor and closest friend told me to discern between objects. So to play is, like I often talk about earth, air, fire, water. I love the elements and spirit. And I know what each of them feels like. And if you think about them right now, your body's going, oh, I know, hot, cold, like it moves me and breathe. It moves me one way or another. It's dangerous. It's not. But then we start breaking that down into things. Is it a living thing? Is it not? Is it man-made? Like there's so many ways to start playing with what does that vibration look like? And that play helps, but I can't go into the how with the rest of it because I'll fail at the what's in the box game.
Well, I'll maybe I'll blow your mind a little bit more here, my friend. So, okay. And this connects to what I was going to say about the clairtangency. So you connected into what my soul, as always. Did you, when we had our last chat, I sent you a message talking about Dolores Cannon. Did you end up reading any of her books or tuning into any of that?
No, I still have her books. I have them, but I didn't.
I highly recommend you lean into it. But the reason I bring her up, because she's been a really big mentor and educator in my life around this frequency piece and the soul's journey. And what I'm going to throw in here, and this comes back to the clairtangency, a soul expression of the oneness, right, isn't just humans, isn't just animals, isn't just, again, I'm putting the fingers, living things.
Oh, yeah. Animism.
A soul, and she talks about it a lot in her work, and I really resonate with it. We can move through, if God is everything, if love is everything, what does that mean? That means love is literally everything, right? I think it's a Rumi quote that matter is just God moving slow enough so we can interact with it, right? So even that rock, right? People know this through crystal work and working with crystals, and there's energy, there's essence, there's I would say there is a soul in everything. So when we connect to a box or a desk or a TV or whatever the inanimate object is, I would actually assert that there is frequency. There is still frequency that our soul can connect to that can help us distinguish. Does that resonate, my friend?
Yes, absolutely. It does resonate. I muted myself. It does resonate. And I think when she broke it down for me that way as well, it helped me say, oh, okay, I can sort of figure out how to connect in a way that doesn't feel pressureful, or even pressureful. I don't even think is a word in English. It doesn't feel pressured.
It is now.
Okay. And feels fun. I think, when I hear things about animism, which is like Colette Baron-Reid talks a lot about this, but so does in a way Marie Kondo.
Can you define that word for us?
It's exactly what you said, that everything has a spirit. Yeah. Everything, living or not, has spirit or energy. And you can tune into the frequency of that. It's and I think if you think about, like, one of the most popular things was Marie Kondo's tidying up, or I'm not sure what it was. It was a big deal about cleaning your house. And her approach was to thank the item before releasing it and letting it go. And that, to me, I perceive that as, again, an act of gratitude from one spirit to another before releasing it into the world. And so, yes, if I look at the item in the box as having its own spirit, perhaps, let's see, the next time I talk to you, I'll have some success there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, and I think the clairsenses, going back to what we were saying, whether it's clairsentience, clairempathy, and clairtangency, that can really help us distinguish, right? Even though technically everything is all the same, everything's all love, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's very hard for us to go general. So let's get specific. So let's use those different senses, those pathways of interpreting spirit and love and energy, so we can start to understand and distinguish. So then our ego doesn't get involved, and then we're all good, right? So,
yeah.
Done. My friend, let's shift here now. Speaking of frequency, because this is the deeper layer that I wanted to go to here today. And I think as I sort of felt, the clairsenses would take us to this space. And now this is the deeper area I want to go into. With this understanding that, most of our clairs, if not all of them, that's what they're helping us do. They're helping us interpret whether it's our frequency or the frequency outside of us, to really understand our connection to the outside and thus inside. I'm wondering, in your opinion, and I want to give an example here. Me and you talking about this is very normal for us. Like, this feels aligned. I feel opened. I feel connected. I know you do too, right? But I'll just speak for myself. When I step out this door and go into the real world, again, my fingers are going crazy today. It's very hard for us to express this kind of frequency to, the larger collective. So I ask you, my friend, for the people listening and for myself, how do we allow and feel normal in these beautiful gifts, in these beautiful frequencies, in a collective where it hasn't been accepted yet? It hasn't been welcomed yet.
Well, for me, the first thing that comes up is allowing myself to connect with other souls that resonate or that vibrate at the same level as mine. And so what I mean by that is, if I'm not open to that experience of connecting with that type of tribe, then I won't be able to receive them when they show up. Right. So for me, it's setting that intention. 1, 2, I talk about it all the time. Like, I think a lot of us do actually. We say, if we're trying to empathize with someone or just express compassion, we say like, oh, I can see that. Or we can say, oh, I feel that. Or like, yeah, I get it. I really get it. And like, those words we use them all the time. But if you want to put them in a category, they fall into the different clairs. One of the things that you can feel normal talking about is claircognizance, right? Because I didn't want to lose that one.
It just popped back into my mind. Go.
Clear knowing. It's that I just know it. And so many people, especially like if we I'm thinking about policemen now, they follow their instincts, right? We see it on TV, like, I don't know, I got to follow my gut and it'll lead them down the right path. But that clear knowing is something that we all talk about, especially when we talk about animals, right? Their instincts. We talk about it if you want to use different language in psychology, the version of claircognizance that shows up a lot is fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? It's like a reaction to a knowing. And so even though that's a shadow, right? That's a part of our shadow work where we can shed light into how we respond to that knowing and how to find new ways. People do use different language for the same thing. So your gut instinct, your intuition, or just your clear knowing, I just know because I know, right? That very I just know it, right? People say it all the time. And they don't realize they're talking about one of the biggest clairs that we all come into this world with. So we can literally, for the first and foremost, to survive. Clear knowing to survive. It is safe. It is not safe. I must run. I must fight. All of this is part of us as animals, right? As nature, because we're nature. And we're also spirit. We're both. We are the anchor between heaven and earth and all that we are and all that we do. And those expressions show up just to help guide us on this journey. Ooh. You saw what happened to me there. That's why you didn't jump in.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, you got it straight away. I was about to like, oh, wait. I love that was beautiful. It's funny because we've done an episode now. I was just in that moment imagining myself through my clairvoyance, re-listening to that piece again. Like, oh, I'm going to enjoy that later, even now. What I wanted to add to this, my friend, is, you just spoke to it briefly. How would you distinguish then between the claircognizance, the knowing, and our instincts? Because I would define our instincts connected more to the human being that we are, right? The beautiful human animal that we are. And then I would assert the claircognizant is more related to our spiritual essence, our soul that is getting the download. So where is there an overlap? Obviously, we're both in one, but can we put a distinction, or are they the same?
I want to say yes to everything, because sometimes when we're really aligned with our soul, because some people are not. So how do I describe that? If you're really in alignment with your soul, it's both, right? And your intuition or your instinct, right? So the claircognizant or the instinct, let's say, isn't as, I keep wanting to show, like if you're dusting something off, there isn't all these layers of dust on it that shift an instinct into a judgment. the shift in instinct into unwarranted fear, right? Because we'll mistake those things as instinct because of our life experiences, where we've trained ourselves to back away and to be afraid and to judge, like what we talked about at the beginning of this episode. That is an instinct. We trained ourselves into that, or allowed ourselves to be trained, or both. And so if we're in alignment, there isn't a line. It's like a blur. It's like they work together, right? This physical animal and the spiritual being. But if we're not in alignment, it becomes it can be a bit of contrast in that experience until we allow ourselves to align. And when I say what that looks like is someone's soul can look like it's literally sort of outside of their body, like just to the right, just to the left. And I see like that expression of them. And I'm like, oh, we just want to shove you back into like the physical form. And how do we get you to receive yourself at that way, you know? That was a little bit off, but that's sort of how I perceive it.
No, I think it's beautiful. I got the image in my head, and especially this is where I would assert for people to look into the work with the chakra system, because I've found that the energy system and working with each chakra center and then ultimately each energy body, which is a whole other conversation. But when we can connect into the energy centers, they are the ways that we can bring that being back in, right? I've found, and I just experienced this last night actually, that we can actually energetically, spiritually be disembodied through certain areas, right? So we can be projecting like our throat outside of us, for example, or our solar plexus energetically outside of us. So what I would suggest people to do, if you're resonating with what Lisann's saying, is tune into this specific area, because sometimes it's not going to be just one energy body. It's going to be multiple spaces, and when you can tune into one, then you can start to bring them all in. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah. No. And there are people that beautifully do that. They can help you just work with the one and bring it into alignment and be patient with it, instead of like looking at all these buttons I want to push them. Like, okay, let's just put them all back in place, like one at a time, start digging deep into that and let yourself bloom, right? Bloom in those spaces within you. Yeah. I love that. I love the way you express that.
Yeah. I saw a rainbow. I was expressing, I saw the rainbow bridge, and the rainbow bridges, we can connect that to the chakras. And many of us, myself included, for a long time, we put that rainbow bridge outside of us, but it's really internally. Anyway, that's another conversation.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go.
So every time I've seen you chat, either like on a live or in these Zooms, you close your eyes.
Yeah.
So is it only to process your thoughts? Is it also to allow your vision to come through? Do you want to even share about that?
I do. Let's do it. So,
okay.
Because I haven't had a chance to speak about it, so I appreciate you asking. For me, and this goes heavily to the theme that we've been talking about today, my mind is quite active. My mind is, and it's a beautiful part of me, because I have a burning desire to learn. And if people listening have probably seen this in the episodes, that's why I love doing conversations with you and everyone that comes on. I'm learning as much as I hope that the audience is. However, what I've noticed is that the learning and the intellectual pursuit can sometimes be a challenge when opening up my channel and opening up, whether it's my clairvoyance, that's the big one for me, my knowing, and some of the other ones that I'm developing. So I found when I close my eyes that I can have both. So if rather than just getting stuck in the intellectual expression and the logical things I want to teach on, I've noticed that when things are channeling through me and then I close my eyes, I can express both sides of the coin. I can express maybe the beautiful logical structure that I want to educate and support with, but then also I've found a flow of divinity and expression and download or intuitive insight also comes in on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question, my friend?
It does. And how else do your clairs express themselves?
Yeah.
Like what have you found?
So my two big ones at the moment are the the clairvoyance. So I see a lot, especially on these episodes. So with you today, it's been going crazy with a lot of images. And the other big one for me at the moment is clairsentience. And I get a lot of, similar to you, I get a lot of the goosebumps, especially with guides and angels and ascended masters and entities that visit. So they're my two big ones. But then another one that maybe I can ask you a question about, because it sounds like you have this one developed. My clairaudience, I feel, is coming through. And the reason I feel this is because I've shared on a couple of episodes, the ringing in the ears is a big symptom for me at the moment. So what's your perspective on that, my friend? I'm interested, because I know I've spoken to a lot of other intuitives around the awakening experience, and tinnitus and ear ringing being a really big symptom and step along that path. How does this factor into the clairaudience conversation?
One of the best things, best practices, I would say, in terms of helping oneself discern the tinnitus from like a medical condition. One, go get it checked out just to make sure. Right.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we'll hear the like ascension symptoms or like awakening or just developing your clairs, the ear ringing. And so asking yourself the question, if it's in the left or the right, what does that mean for me? Right. On each side. The other one is that another shamanic mentor of mine, she shared this with me. It was great. Decrease the frequency so I can understand what this means. And when I do that, I'll get a word that comes through. I'll get a word. So it'll be like ring, ring, ring. And I'll say, just decrease, like, what does this mean? Decrease the frequency so I can understand it. And then I'll get a word or a phrase or a whole thing come through my body. And it feels like it's coming down from my crown, going down my spine, and like words. And so I'm like, oh, okay, now I understand. Other people think it's just like, oh, I've just jumped a timeline or ascended or into a new level. And maybe that's true for them. I don't know. The only time that I've ever experienced that with my ears is when like my ears popped out of nowhere. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And then someone else said, oh yeah, you're in a new place. When I've experienced, and this is very out there, this is very mystical, right? When I experience a shift in timeline, whether it's for me or let's say someone that I'm working on energetically and I'm seeing what their choices are, it looks like translucent glass, like a bubble, right? And it'll move from one right to left. So from past to future, right? Like just sliding doors. And now I see they made a new choice. They're in a new timeline. My throat wants to close up to this because I'm afraid to talk about this. So I'm going to keep going.
Yes, please.
I've seen it for myself when I've done Qigong, which I do in the morning when it's warm and not blazing hot, to ground and to release energy. And I've seen like me shift in a timeline. So I've seen that same glass or that bubble energy move from one side to the next. And the latest one, I moved through it. It was like I stepped through that translucent energy. And I felt the shift. And typically, if you want to ask the question, did I just jump a timeline, or did I make a new choice inside that shifted my current reality that will support my highest and best life? That's another way to say it. Doesn't sound as sci-fi, right? Making a new choice shifts your timeline. So when I want to ask questions like, did that really happen? What I'll notice is that there are slight differences in the people around me, in their memories, and how they remember like our experiences. I try to tread very carefully into like, don't you remember? Because a lot of times the answer is no, I don't remember that at all. And I'm like, what is happening? Where am I? Like, and that's a whole other conversation. But like, if we are with one and everything is love, then time is also part of that and is not something we need to fight or count or try to tread upon lightly. It is something that works in our favor and can support us if we're willing and able to allow ourselves to see that with our clairs or just with our human eyes.
And it's, so this is a whole other episode we could do, my friend, but this is the non-linear, non-local reality that what is time, right? from a quantum perspective, past, present, they're all folding onto each other anyway, right? And then when you go to the space and place in which our guides, our angels, the higher frequencies of beings live, that is timeless and spaceless as well. So this linear space, if you want to call it that we live in, when we say it is an illusion, it really is what it is, right? This segmentation. But I will say, Lisann, I really want to encourage you to read Dolores Cannon's books, right?
Okay.
And I'm going to specifically, because you're speaking about timelines here, and this is for people listening as well, I would start with The Convoluted Universe, because she talks a lot about not just a lot of loving entities, but this idea of these different timelines wrapping onto each other and expressing through each other and what they look like. So happy that you brought that up. And I will say, just going back to the ear ringing, I'm happy that you highlighted the physical side of this and the ascension conversation, because that is something I've seen within myself and also people have been able to help. It's very easy for us to only spend time in the spiritual and think that all of our challenges are just a spiritual conversation. And while I would assert there is always a spiritual foundation, sometimes where our first step needs to be taken is in the physical, right? So we might need to go get that gut test, or we might need to get that blood test and then go speak to our guides or bring in our angels. So it's important to see this as a holistic conversation. So I just appreciate you really highlighting that. We've gone off into the spiritual deep ends here, my friend, and I really appreciate it, because this is where I wanted to go. And I want to throw you a question here now. It goes back to what I was saying before around, quote unquote, feeling normal again within our spiritual divinity and our frequency within a collective that maybe hasn't gone through the process yet. And the question I want to ask you is, the frequency that is being emitted through our clairs, right? The essence, if we could summarize it, it is our divinity, right? It is what makes us powerful, what connects us to all that is. It is the thing that reminds us that what is outside of us, God, consciousness, the quantum field, the one mind, whatever your name is for it, is also inside of us. The question I want to get at here is, how do we embrace more of this? How do we embrace more of our divinity? Because I know on my path, and if people are listening to this podcast, I'm sure you've experienced this too, we can fall off that track, right? We can forget how powerful we are. We can forget that there is a seed inside of us that is waiting to be expressed and waiting to be shared with the world. So the question I'll throw at you here is, how do we embrace this more? How do we embrace more of our divinity and allow it to flow rather than feeling unworthy and maybe fearful of it?
That's one of the biggest questions. I feel like that's what we came here to do. Like, to find the ways to unravel the onion so we can get to that space.
These are the things I think about all the time, Lisann. That's why I wanted to ask you.
I think for me, it's simple. Make it as simple as possible in terms of allowing myself to play. I'm just going to play. There's nothing hanging on this, right? There's nothing that needs to happen. I don't need to make anything happen. I don't need to be at a certain level, right? Because that's the thing I fight with all the time, right? And so releasing my grip on an outcome, releasing my grip on an idea of how I should behave. I think these all things of like release, letting go, and playing is how I think we can step most into our divinity. Because my experience of ascended masters and archangels is, and anything that's like different deities across religions, is always loving and light. And it doesn't have this heavy feeling. We can talk about serious things and still, I'm getting tingles at my legs. It's still beautiful and light, and it feels good. And so if you can lean into that feeling of the good feeling within you, and that can be the biggest work, just starting there. How can I acquire more of that? To remember that I too am that goodness, that joy, that love. I am that. Starting there is where we start to allow ourselves to open more and to be open to the possibilities that exist within us and around us and outside of us, so we can have this merger of self and really walk in our divinity in this time and space.
I love that. I was just sitting with what you were expressing there. And the thing that bubbled up, my throat chakra gets tight. Uh, I think I feel once we're in that space of expansion, I think it's also inviting in the pieces that were in resistance as well, right? So I'll give an example and get your perspective on this. I spent a big chunk of my day yesterday. I was going back and forth in between these two states, between expansion and connection, and then there were pieces of me that were being triggered, and then I would be expansive, and I think the piece that I was missing that I often forget is it's very easy for us once we're triggered or we're in that sort of constricted space to stay there, to feel like the victim, right? To feel like let's just stay in the resistance because it's almost easy to stay in the resistance, and then we feel challenged that why can't we get to the expanded state? But then when we get to the expanded state, we then feel like we don't need to do the work. We don't feel like we can forget about the shadow. We can forget about the resistance that we were just in. So I think there is a combination here, and this is what I want to get your perspective on, where we can invite, when we are in the expansion and the play that you said and the love, it's also remembering that, okay, now in that space, let's invite some of the shadows that maybe have been taking us down. Let's bring in some of that resistance so we can come back more to that wholeness. Does any of that resonate, my friend?
Well, yeah, I think even if sometimes once we reach a certain point where we don't even have to ask the question, our soul invites the experience regardless. Like, great, we're so happy you reached level 10. Now get ready for level 11. And now you'll have all of these shadows to play with. So you can shed light on these experiences. And it's like, thank you so much. New challenges. And it totally, it happens. I mean, that's why I mentioned the psychic thing, right? Because I also, the whole like trying to figure out what's inside of a box, that challenges me. Or for a long time, oracle cards challenged me. The idea of someone being a psychic medium, I don't even like those labels. That bothers my spirit because I'm like, I'm not that. I can't do that. But part of shamanism is those exact labels. But it's my perception, right? And how I like to perceive things. And some people are different, right? But being predictive, I don't like that. That because I see there's so many potential outcomes. I don't like to say one thing is going to happen because I know that's not true. That's not true for me. And so I can't say something that isn't true in my world. But there are people that are really good at that and that ends up happening and that's great for them. I'm just like, for me, the learning is not to judge it, regardless if it's predictive or not to judge it, the label, and not to feel like it is other or different or better or not than what I do. And so that's the shadow that I'm working with now. How do I release the judgment I have with these other tools and labels to allow myself to shine? And the more work you do, the more those invitations to work on the shadow just show up. But in the beginning, I think being cognizant and welcoming the experiences, I think that takes a lot of, I want to say chutzpah. I think it takes like so much guts and like courage to say, I am welcoming this because I'm ready to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And I would just add, and maybe this will help you, my friend, because I know this has helped me. It's realizing that your capacity to hold both the light and the dark, the shadow and the expanded parts of you can hold all of it, right? Your potential, your divinity, the presence that is you holds it all, right? So I think something that has really helped me with this is realizing that what does it look like? And this can be a visualization that people can try. This is what a mentor has shared this with me recently, and it's been really powerful. Is what does it look like for me to be the presence, the observer, the unconditional loving witness that has inside of me both the space that is the wound, both the space that maybe is judging the wound, and also the space that is holding the dreams, holding the light, holding the expansion and the purpose and the passion. So what does that look like? What does it look like to be all of those things? Mm-hmm. Right? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. And I actually want to answer that.
Yeah. Answer it, please.
So one of the hardest, it was a very challenging experience. I'm wearing a necklace that's a phoenix.
I love it.
And when I started getting a lot of my animal guides showing up, the first was a phoenix. And do you remember when I talked a little bit about our souls not being in alignment or not really seeing it? In my perspective, we walk in different energies all the time, and those energies show up to serve whatever we need to serve. And so this phoenix energy was always around me, but I was never embodied in the phoenix. It was just sort of support team A, like, thanks, phoenix energy. You know, if I would do a deep dive into the phoenix, the stories around it, or that it was like a demon or something, right? Or other people just say, oh, just a mythical bird that breathes fire or that regenerates from its own ashes. I prefer the regenerates from its own ashes story.
Me too.
And I feel completely embodied in my phoenix. I can feel my talons, my fire. I can feel my wings that are elevated by divine source. I can feel that all of this that courses, even as I speak, I feel like I'm about to breathe fire. I feel like all the fire that courses through me, that supports me on my journey, that helps me tear away at the parts of me that need to be exposed so I can breathe fire into them, let them turn to ash and rise from it, continues to happen again and again. And I can live in that phoenix energy, and I can be that not just for myself, but the people around me, because that beautiful fire that does not burn just regenerates and builds. And so when we can look at the things that feel like pain and say, what are you here to teach me? What are you here to show me? We then again rise up from our own ashes to become something far more beautiful than we once were, because we said yes to that experience. I'm getting so emotional right now.
My friend, I think that's a beautiful, powerful space to end this episode. You're so good at that. I just want to say, you're so good at, you just said that you're getting so emotional right now, but just to remind you, my friend, that's all that you are. That emotion, just to make this very clear for you and maybe people listening, that emotion is what allowed you to do what you just did, right? We aren't identified by our emotions, but our beautiful expressions of emotions allow that channel that we just heard you express to occur, right? So I just, for people listening that just connected to Lisann's beautiful expression, ask yourself, where can you allow that expression to move through you, right? That beautiful energy is really what we're here to experience, right? We are here in this physical form as the spiritual being to channel through the physical form that energy, right? And that emotion is a part of that. So yeah, I might have to get another phoenix necklace myself, my friend, to remind me of that. Lisann, I love you very much. Thank you for spending time with me today. These chats, I could do these all the time with you. So I appreciate this. You help me, you remind me that this is normal, right? This kind of conversation, I wish I could have this with all people, and maybe one day this would be a sort of collective mainstay. But I appreciate you. I appreciate your light. I appreciate the love that you give the world. And it really reminds me of my power. For people that want to connect to you, want to dive into more of your work, I know we shared it on the first episode, but is there anything you have going on, anything you want to share with my beautiful audience if they want to go deeper with you?
Yeah, sure. So my website and all links are lgvalentin.com, but I'm going to have a mini guide for your audience that they can download if they want, so they can get like a breakdown of the clairsenses and how they can play with them if they want to.
Yeah. And we'll put it in the show details as always, and I'll put a little link. Lisann, I'm being pulled to ask you the question again that I asked you at the end of last episode. I asked you what your definition of love is. And I'm wondering if there's anything more you want to add to that today.
Yeah, I'm going to start sobbing. I don't know. Love is this: stepping up and talking to another soul about their journey, sharing those stories so other people can not just hear the words, but hear the resonance and let it spark fires in them. That's love.
Look at me tapping into my clear cognizance. Look at that going on right there. Thank you, my friend. That was beautiful. And we're going to add that to your beautiful extra definition that we shared at the end of the last episode. Thank you for spending time with me today. Thank you for being the emotional being that you are. Beautiful souls. I hope you have gained some knowledge, gained some awareness, dived deeper into all things spiritual here today, clairsenses, all the aspects we've dived into. Lisann and myself, we wish you a wonderful evening, morning, and night, wherever you are in the world. And until next time, here on the Cosmic Love Antenna, we love you very much, and we'll talk again soon. Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Cosmic Love Antenna with me, your host, Harrison. If you gained value or this episode hit your heart, please remember to share this out with a friend, a family member, or a lover. You can also leave your love over on Apple reviews and Spotify star feedback, and this helps me spread my frequency to more souls in need. Finally, if you want to connect with me deeper, want to reach out, interested in coaching, please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn at Harrison Meagher, spelled Meagher. Sending you so much love.